Jack, another day, another FPL vid. What are we doing today?
Josh, today we are going to talk about metrics. So we're going to talk about statistical metrics you can use to help with FPL and making decisions that aren't just XG and XA. Because everyone knows about them now, don't they? They're everywhere, aren't they? We're sick of them.
Mainstream.
They're
Boring.
mainstream. They're on FIFA. They're on Sky. You know, it's not really an edge anymore, I think, to know about them, is it?
No. Well, Michael Owen's like referring to him and stuff. That you got to move on to
You
the
got to
more
move on.
tasty
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Red flag. As soon as Owen says it, ditch it. Forget about it.
Boring Owen.
So what we've got six alternative metrics, I guess you'd call them, that you can look at that they're a bit more complex, maybe a bit deeper than just expected goals and expected assists. And they're available on sites like FBref and things for you to dig into. But they're kind of unknown. I think we'll start out with perhaps the more common ones that you might still know, and we'll end up with some crazy acronyms that maybe you don't know, and you'll learn something. And we'll talk about how they're useful for your FPL decisions.
Sounds great. Yeah. So like you said, we'll start off with the maybe simpler ones and then just get crazy, which is the ones I really want to talk about. So
Yeah, the wacky ones. So let's kick it off. Then what's the first one, Josh? It's not XG, it's not XA. What is it?
it's XG and XA together. It's XGI, expected goal
That's
involvement, Jack.
okay. What's that?
It's as it says on the tin, as we described in the lead-in, it is just simply XA and XG added together. So it gives a more holistic view of a player's goal threats and creative impact in the game. And
Yeah,
you can I know you can kind of set all these metrics by the whole season so far or per 90 a lot of the time. So yeah, over whatever period you want to, it's that collated.
nice. Yeah. And I guess it's handy because you can sort of, when you're picking between two players, you can go on understat and I think you can combine, you can look, you've got a striker who's like banged in 8 goals, but has hardly any assist potential. And you might have a striker that's scored a few, but also has assisted a few or has high XA. So you can kind of make, like you say, that more holistic decision. Like the season we're in now, Erling Haaland, I think he's off the charts for XG, but his XA is tiny, whereas an Ollie Watkins is pretty good on both. So it's sort
Mm.
of yeah. But yeah, as you say, it's still pretty simple.
Yeah, diversify those points, diversify your portfolio.
Exactly,
Get
man.
you want a player that can get you a bit of both, bit of everything.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, XGI probably the most simple one on this list that we've got. But let's get a little bit deeper. Josh, what we got next?
So XGA, XGC, I've seen it kind of referred to as both of these, but expected goals against, expected goals conceded.
Are they the same?
Um, I believe they're the same. Yeah, from what I've seen, I've normally referred to it as XGA, but on the Fantasy Premier League website, they use XGC, but it's the
Okay.
same thing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we talked about this before, whereas I think from an FPL perspective, it's most useful when you look at a team because the whole team concedes the goal. It's not like you lose your clean sheet bonus or bonus points or the points from a clean sheet when the whole team concedes, and therefore you're looking at
Mm.
how good or bad the team is rather than looking at a player.
So just for clarity, this is expected goals. So this is how many goals the team should have conceded based on the shots they've faced.
The chances, yeah, that they've conceded against them. So yeah,
The
like
opposite of
and
XG. It's like
yeah,
the inverse.
exactly that. And I guess it's if you have got a keeper who had an absolute stormer or poor finishing from the striker, then you may have actually conceded less. And therefore you might think, oh, these players, this team's doing all right
Mm.
and is getting clean sheets and it's not too bad. When actually if you look at their XGA, they might have got a little bit lucky or their keeper's just having an absolute stormer and it might signal the fact that that luck's going to run out at some point.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny. I think with XGA, I look at that a bit more like you've just described, that it's a bad side if a team's got a high XGA, even if they're not conceding that many. Whereas with XG, with a striker, it's one of those, you can spin both ways, and you can be like, well, he's got a high XG, but he isn't scoring. It means he's due a goal. It means he will score. Or you can be like, he's got a high XG and he's underperforming. It just means he can't finish. So you can spin it both ways. But with the XGA, I just avoid teams with a high XGA because I'm just like, that dam will break at some point.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that you should pick players, defenders that don't have any attacking output and think, oh, if their team's got a low XGA, then you're chasing kind of clean sheet points there, aren't you? But that's always a dangerous game. But it does show, Liverpool, for example, had great XGA in previous seasons when their defense was more solid, and now they're nowhere near like kind of the best. They're middle of the table, and it shows.
Right.
They rarely get clean sheets. So those like Robbo and Trent assets who are really highly priced, like it's almost like they're no longer worth the money.
Yeah. Debatable. But yeah, they're certainly not the assets they once were, are they? Kieran Trippier is the new thing, the new hot thing.
Hero.
Cool. Okay. So now we're going to get a bit more into the realms of, I hadn't heard about this before we started prepping for this podcast. That's how wacky we're going to get now. So I researched this next one. So xGOT.
Love it already. Rolls off the tongue.
Thrones, expected Game of Thrones. xGOT. So this is, so I really like this one. This might be my favorite one that I found. So it's expected goals on target. So I was like, what the hell is that? And the way that it was succinctly put to me was where XG is before the shot is taken, what the expected goal is. This one is after the shot is taken. So it's expected goals on target. So how this works is, say Harry Kane is on the edge of the box and he takes a shot. Now that shot might be a 0.03 XG. So 3% of shots from there are expected to go in. But he bangs it, because he's Harry Kane, he bangs it top corner. And all of a sudden, that shot is now 0.54 xGOT, because over half of the shots that go into that part of the goal go in. And so Harry Kane will have a high xGOT off the back of that type of shot, whereas Shea Adams, even if they shoot from the same position, will have a much lower xGOT. He'll be much closer to the 0.03 from that same position. So if you look at the xGOT charts, it kind of gives you a more accurate description of the better strikers than just pure XG does, if that makes sense, because Harry Kane's shots from outside the box are going to be of higher quality than a Che Adams shot. Yeah. And if you look at, so I was able to find this is, to be fair, this is a couple of years old, so it's 2020, 2021, but it illustrates what I mean. So it's a chart showing basically an xGOT chart. And as you'd probably expect, Son Heung-min is top. And what is the narrative around Son? He's an amazing finisher from outside inside the box. And so this corroborates that. So if you're looking for a player to sign, going for the higher xGOT is better than just going for the higher XG. So this chart shows, and I'll put it up on screen now, that he had an XG of 8.9, but his xGOT was 12.7 because those shots he took were so good. And you got Ward-Prowse on there, again, not surprising with his free kicks. Lacazette, there's a throwback. So it shows how old this is. Danny Ings when he was good at Southampton. Jay Rodriguez at Everton. I forgot he was even there. But yeah, anyway, this kind of shows that it kind of, I think, is a better way to glean the better finishers than XG.
Yeah, I could have done with xGOT in the Dennis versus King.
Great example.
Yeah, like that. See, I got screwed over that season by just following the XG and being like, King's gotta come good, guys. And then Dennis just banging every week with his amazing finishing.
I wish I had those xGOT stats, man.
Could have done
his
with
X Game of Thrones would have been huge.
So good.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah. So that's I bet Haaland's is through the roof, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean he'll have high both, won't he? But yeah, so
Yeah,
I mean I would advocate replacing XG with xGOT
yeah.
in most of your research. So there you go. So the next one is PPDA, Josh.
Again, rolls off the tongue.
PPDA. Yeah. And they've even shortened it to PPDA because it should be PAPDA.
Jeez.
And this is passes allowed per defensive action.
Oh,
Okay. So do you know about this? Shall I explain it? Do you want to
I
know?
don't. I could guess, but that's not going to be helpful for anyone. So you explain
A guess might be funny, but you don't
it.
have to. No, we don't have to. We don't want to make this video as short as possible. So passes allowed per defensive action. So this is a way to judge how good at pressing a team is. So it's the passes that your team allows the opposition to make before your defensive action is made. So an interception or a tackle. So like Liverpool probably have quite a low PPDA because they're all about that press. So they might allow an average of 5 passes per defensive action that they take, whereas a team that sits back might have a high PPDA because they just let the other team keep the ball. They sit in their own half and wait for them to come. So yeah, interesting one. It's probably less useful for fantasy than the other three we've talked about, but quite interesting still to know at a glance the style of a team, I think.
Yeah, and I guess like that's when you first described it, I was like, okay, how can you use this for FPL? And it doesn't really seem to be useful for any defensive decision making. But from an attacking point of view, I guess that's why teams press, right? Is chance creation. If you win the ball high up the pitch when the other team's not set up, you're going to create chances. So um, if they've got a low passes allowed per defensive action, then they're a high press team. They should be creating chances from that.
Yeah. I guess you could look at it from a defensive perspective of FPL as if your defender is about to face 3 teams with high PPDAs, or I should say low PPDAs. You know that it's likely that
Pressing.
your defender will be pressed a lot in the next 3 games. So maybe rethink him. But yeah, you're right.
Nice.
Yeah, interesting one. Never heard of it.
Fancy.
PPDA. The fifth one, we've got GCA/SCA. So so that stands for goal creating actions or shot creating actions. So similar to your the XGA and XGC, I think they mean the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So shot creating actions. So it's a bit more sort of broad than XA. Basically, it looks to basically improve on what expected assist is, because it also includes things like if you're fouled, which is more viable for FPL because that counts as an assist for FPL. So if like Jack Grealish is fouled and that free kick leads to a goal, he'll have a GCA for that stat for that, whereas he wouldn't have an expected assist for that. And then dribbles, but then it also gives the player who might score the goal or take the shot credit for a GCA. So if a player dribbles around the whole team and scores, like Hazard retired today, I was watching some of his goals, so he'd have a very high GCA, even for his own goals, because he'd like skin 3 players and then bang it in. So again, it kind of gives you a more refined picture of how creative and effective a player is attacking wise, I think, than XA does.
And maybe not by design, but it is more focused towards FPL point scoring, as you said as well, doesn't it? It brings into the metric things that could contribute to points for your players, for players that have a higher GCA because of the fouls and because of the fact that it's contributing just also everything they do in the build up to the shot, as well as like their own XA to their own shot, as well as just the shot itself.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an interesting one. So if you're looking at XA, maybe have a glance at SCA if you really want to know who's pulling the strings in that team. And then the final one, Josh, is XOVA.
All ending in
It's
A.
over.
Everything is an A.
And in my notes, I don't know what the oh no, I do. It's so offensive value added.
Ah.
So this is a bit of a weird one. So there's a formula that I'll put on screen now. So the formula is it's non-penalty XG of this player. So for a given player, non-penalty XG plus their expected assists, so plus XA, but then minus XA received. So you do the non-penalty XG plus XA in brackets, like you learned in school. You do that bit first.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that total, you minus the expected assist received from whoever passed them the ball or whoever played it to them. So I guess the idea behind this is to just encapsulate just their value that player is adding to the attack of their team. So if you've got a player that is just banging in the penalties, has no expected assists, he's not laying it off to teammates, and players are laying it on a plate for him, but he's missing them and just scoring penalties, he'll have a very low XOVA. He might have a high XG because of the penalties, but he'll have a low XOVA because he's not assisting anyone and he's receiving a lot of things on a plate, but we're minusing that from this score.
That's Josh King from the few seasons ago.
Josh, you've got this Watford team in your head.
I'm let it go, Jack, as you can tell. But
don't blame me. It was a horrible period for us all. But yeah, that's it. What do you think of that one?
I like the idea that it's taken out the penalty stuff, so the non-penalty, but there are other metrics that cover that. But also just distilling it down to their singular contributions, cutting out a lot of the other noise from the other attacking players as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we want, really, don't we? We're looking at individual assets. We want to know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You want to know if he's like if he is really valuable or he's just lucky that they've put him on penalties. Yeah. And how reliant is he on his teammates? Because I bet, like, again, in the current season we're in, Brentford have fallen off a cliff suddenly.
No Tony.
After Carl Henry got injured. And I bet Mbuemo and Wissa really relied on him. I bet their XOVA was quite low because of him and his supply to them. And it shows that he's gone now. And, you know, they're struggling. So yeah, another interesting one. But there we are, really. So yeah, I think we've covered them off quite nicely. So just do you want to recap them, Josh?
Yeah, we've got we covered XGI first, that's goal involvement. Just go through the top, or do you want to go through definitions as well? Just the top of what we covered, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we covered XGA, so that's expected goals against. xGOT, X Game of Thrones, that's the expected goals on target. PPDA rolls off the tongue, that one, passes allowed per defensive action. Then GCA or SCA, goal creating or shot creating actions, and then finished up with the XOVA, the expected offensive value added. It's a lot of fancy letters flying about there, but the take home for me, and this is always directed for what we can do individually as well. What can I gain from this as an FPL manager? Is I might take a shot at X Game of Thrones to replace XG, or in addition to look XG, and I'll look at the GCA and SCA in addition to the XA, because XA can be a bit hit and miss, can it, sometimes? So anything that adds a little bit of flavor would come in nicely.
Definitely, yeah. I completely concur with that. I think the xGOT, the xGOT, the GCA, and the OVA are the kind of most kind of like eyebrow raisers for me. Particularly xGOT. I mean, that completely, it almost eradicates XG for me, xGOT, because it just gives you that extra layer of, okay, this striker is getting XG, but they're also getting these shots on target. It's crazy. Yeah, xGOT.
xGOT
Got
coming
it.
soon to a Sky Graphic near you, I'm sure, next season.
xGOT, yeah.
xGOT.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, we're making these a bit shorter than we used to. Let us know if we've missed any of your favorite acronyms in metrics.
Yeah, and shout if you use xGOT and it works. We'd love to
Please
hear
do.
it.
Yeah, if it's your secret, I apologize for telling,
Everyone.
yeah, between 200 and 500 viewers about it. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah. Cheers, mum.
Yeah, cheers, mum. But thanks. Yeah, little like would be lovely if you're watching, but
Please do.
only if you liked it.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. Cool. All right. Cheers, Josh.
Cheers, Jack. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.